And it is a lovely early evening here in Tel Aviv, and I have Josh Haimson from Inductive Bio on the line, and a lot of things to talk about. They just got an award, I think, a few days ago.
Yeah, very very excited to be here. And we just won the largest AdMet prediction competition in the world. So excited to go into what that means and chat through it. But it's an exciting day for us.
So where are you based, Josh?
So I'm based in New York, and our company is split across New York, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and San Francisco.
Okay, that's a good and very typical kind of setup for tech bio companies.
Exactly.
Um, so we'll open up the call with a question I ask all of my guests, which is, tell us about your personal journey. How did you go from there to here where you are right now, winning competitions in AdMed, and what happened on the way?
Sure. Happy to go through it. I think the short of it is I've spent my entire career really applying AI to drug discovery and biopharma research. The early days of my career, yeah, started at MIT. I was really focused on machine learning. At the time, we called it natural language processing. It's now language models. And I was working with Mass General to try and develop algorithms to predict whether patients would really respond to different surgical interventions based on the data that was in their medical records. And really just kind of fell in love with this intersection of machine learning and AI, but really applying it to healthcare and life sciences where it can make a huge amount of impact on people's lives every day, a little more so than kind of marketing, targeting and automation. So kind of devoted my career to that. Went to a company called Flatiron Health next, where we were doing that type of work at a much larger scale in oncology. Built out a lot of the AI machine learning teams there to make sense of kind of hundreds of millions of medical records that are extremely messy, and then try and understand from all of that mess of data what treatments are really working for patients and where are there opportunities to kind of do better. And so had kind of a great experience there. Spent a lot of my career there in clinical stage research. Bless you. Um, um, and then we were acquired by Roche, and that kind of transformed my career journey to what is now Inductive, where I found myself running an AI group inside of a very large drug discovery company. And it's funny to look back on now, but to me in 2018, it felt like the peak of hype around AI and drug discovery. There's so much more hype now, but I kind of wanted to figure out what of that, if anything, was real and what of it was just marketing. So spent a lot of time kind of within Roche and Genentech and eventually beyond the four walls of the mothership, really just trying to understand how early stage drug discovery before you get to the clinic works and where there may be opportunities for AI to actually move the needle. And really kind of the aha moment for me, I bumped into Wendy Young, who used to lead small molecule discovery at Genentech, really saw the impact of the early generations of what are called ADMET models to increase the odds of success of compounds that were getting made in this molecular optimization phase, this phase that usually takes 4 or 5 years of drug discovery, thousands of molecules. You could see the trend lines and really start to see both it working today, but also kind of where the technology was going and the opportunity it created. So ended up leaving Roche, Genentech, and kind of starting Inductive to really take that to the next scale.
Well, what a story. So yeah, for the unanointed like myself, what's AdMed?
Great question. Probably should have started there. So, ADMET stands for absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, and toxicity. So, you could kind
Hmm.
of think of it as everything a drug needs to do in the body aside from cure the disease. There's a ton of work that goes into how do you cure a particular disease, but every drug needs to be able to go through what is actually a pretty crazy journey in your body. You take a pill, it goes through your stomach, it needs to survive the acids in your stomach, it needs to make its way into the intestine and then permeate across the intestinal wall. It needs to dissolve into the bloodstream. It needs to survive all of these enzymes in the liver that are really designed to keep things out of the body, and then make its way to, let's say, a tumor where it can go kill cancer cells. And all along the way, it needs to not kill anything aside from those cancer cells. And so all of that kind of collectively stands for ADMET, and it's actually one of the biggest practical challenges in developing a drug is not only do I need this drug to be able to kill cancer cells, but I also need it to take this wild journey through the body and come out the other side really effectively. So that's ADMET.
Well, that's like an aha moment for me, actually, because I knew about these things, but I didn't know it was like such, I guess I didn't know there was a name for it. And it sort of brings us to the next thing I want to talk to you about, which is so how do you create value for your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we build what we call virtual chemistry labs. And one way to think of it is if you think about how science is done today, all of that happens in the wet lab. You have a human chemist who's looking at data, trying to understand, what are some ways that we can design a molecule that can kill cancer cells. And then they come up with a hypothesis, and now they have to go test that hypothesis. So they have to make a molecule at a bench in the wet lab that takes anywhere from weeks to months. And then they have to put that molecule in a series of experiments to measure, what does this actually do to cells? Does it kill cancer cells? Does it keep healthy cells alive? And then it's this iterative process. So usually what happens is you make a molecule, parts of it are good, parts of it are not good, and then you iterate. And in practice, this optimization phase of drug discovery takes typically 4 or 5 years, and you make on the order of 2 to 3 thousand molecules along the way until you could find that one needle in a haystack molecule that balances all of these properties effectively enough to go through that crazy journey of ADMET that we just talked about, while also being really potent against cancer cells, for example, um, and having kind of the right profile that has a good shot of actually working in humans. And then it goes to another 4 or 5 years of clinical testing to validate that it's actually safe and effective for humans. So that's kind of how drug discovery is done today. What we do at Inductive is we build these virtual chemistry labs that essentially mirror what is happening in the wet lab, and allow scientists to go explore chemical space much more effectively by using computers. So we build models of those experiments that are being run in the wet lab, and then we have AI chemistry assistants. You can think of these as AI scientists that are looking at data, coming up with hypotheses, and then testing those hypotheses in these virtual models of biology. And because this is all happening in the computer, it can kind of scale up with compute. And so a scientist, a human scientist can come up with 4 or 5 ideas, um, and then they have to go make that. But overnight, these virtual labs are kind of exploring hundreds of thousands, millions of hypotheses, testing them in these virtual models of biology, and then surfacing the most interesting ones to the team. And then the upshot, to your question, how does this create value? Because you can go explore far more hypotheses far
So
faster.
many orders of
uh,
magnitude more and orders of magnitude faster.
exactly. So the upshot for our partners is we've been able to take what is typically a 4 or 5 year process, cut that down to 1 to 2 years, and at the end get a much higher quality molecule that has a higher likelihood of actually working in patients in the clinic. So that's how we create value for our partners.
So it sounds to me like there must be some kind of a significant setup piece to get this to work. When someone comes to you and says, "Look, we're working on a molecule to do this," um, you must have to build the model. You must need to build this model, right? And that must take time, no?
It takes time. It's not a sign up now and run with it. But it's not a massive setup. The nice thing about this space that we focused on of AdMet is that everyone is running roughly the same types of experiments. There's only so many ways that people measure metabolism of a molecule or permeability of a molecule. And so we have these kind of foundational models that have been trained for each of these core properties, that have been trained on a very large data set. A big part of how we've built really the state of the art here is by building a pre-competitive data consortium across the industry. So we have hundreds of thousands of molecules worth of data that we pre-train these models on. And then when we work with a new partner, we then go fine-tune those models to their specific chemistry and their specific version of the experiment. And so that's typically a 2 to 3 week process, and then they're kind of up and running and ready to use it.
2 to 3 weeks doesn't sound bad at all. But how did you get the people to sign up for this consortium? What kind of what magic wand did you wave to get people to say, "Hey, sign up for a process that with some of my competitors will be there also"?
Yeah, it was definitely a journey early on. I think as we were getting started on the company, we had this idea of, would people be willing to share and in what ways and how? And I wasn't sure myself if that would be something the industry was open to. I think what we learned is that um, this problem of ADMET optimization, again, all of the things that are needed to go right for a drug to have a shot of working in humans, it's universal across the industry. Everyone is struggling with this, and everyone is spending years and millions of dollars trying to solve that problem. And it's usually not the competitive differentiation for a new drug that comes to market. And so, as we were getting started with our first few customers, we didn't have this kind of consortium model at the beginning. But then, it became very clear that, hey, if we had more data here, these models would do a lot better. And we were able to start with kind of our first set of customers and say, is there a structure in which you would feel comfortable pooling this data for the purpose of training? What are the IP restrictions that need to be in place? What are the security restrictions that need to be in place to get to a point where a rising tide can really lift all boats here and the whole industry can move faster while still kind of protecting the necessary IP? And that was a lot of time with our partners, with lawyers as always, but and of course security engineers to really harden the system. But we were able to kind of pull that together, and now these models are the state of the art because of it.
Well, so that sounds like, that just brings us directly. It's a straight shot into the moat question.
It
So,
does.
and in a way, by the way, looking back, it sounds like this is kind of reminiscent, not quite the same, but reminiscent of what Flatiron Health did way back in the day, right? When
Yeah,
people said
it is a
it,
part of where the inspiration came from.
maybe you had the same idea, but it's not quite the same. But still, it's consortium of data, and there was the free community oncology EMR, and here you're appealing to people's sense of good citizenship and the good the better good, I guess you would say, if it but
I would say that's part of it. At the end of the day, I am a realist in business, and uh, I think everyone wants to do the right thing, but it also needs to make business sense for them to do the right thing. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. And for our partners, and really why I think this consortium took off and why it works is at the end of the day, the most important thing for drug discovery teams is to get a really high quality molecule into the clinic as fast as possible to go test the hypothesis. And so for them, I think some of them are, partially are doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but I think practically it's a selfish choice to say, we want to design the highest quality drug. We know that we don't have the scale of data we need to build models to do that. But if we participate in this consortium, we can get access to that.
and that is actually a very practical thought because if we didn't have a consortia for foreign exchange rates, we would never be able to trade forex, right? So there is, and that certainly is commercial as it gets. And wow, okay, so that answers the moat question. Boom, we can check that off. Okay.
Yep.
So, and it's sort of next question is like, how do you make money? So how do you capture value? You have the consortium. I assume people can participate in the consortium for free, but how do you capture value for your customers?
Yeah, so we have three different business models, and really kind of our philosophy is we want to partner with teams in the way that makes sense for them, and we are kind of very flexible. So the first model is software as a service. So we build these virtual labs as software, and we deploy that software directly to the scientists at our partners, and they pay a licensing fee for that, standard kind of software as a service business. And that really allows them to run experiments on these digital models of biology, scale up kind of the scientific exploration that they're doing, and do that themselves. So that's kind of model one is software as a service. Model two is consulting, but the twist for us is that we do it in an AI enabled way. So we have these AI medicinal chemistry assistants I mentioned in the virtual lab that can really go scale up a lot of the work that is being done. And so we partner with some of our partners to actually bring both human experts, veteran medicinal chemists who've run drug programs for 30 years, designed many drugs that are, in the formularies today, but pair them with this almost army of AI scientists underneath them that can really kind of scale up the work that they're doing. And so that's kind of a consulting model where we essentially become an extension of our partner's team and also really help them take full advantage of the AI capabilities in the virtual labs that we're building. And then the third piece that we're really excited about, we've been building over the past few months and rolling out to some partners now, is actually kind of integrating the virtual labs that we've built with best-in-class wet labs to actually provide end-to-end chemistry services for our partners. So we now have these loops where the AI scientists are coming up with hypotheses, exploring hundreds of thousands of ideas, simulating the results of those experiments, what they would be in the wet lab, and then prioritizing a set of 40 or 50 molecules that are really interesting to test, but also readily accessible at the specific wet lab we partner with. And they then go make that molecule, generate the data, and turn it around in the order of weeks instead of months. So that's kind of the third model is we're actually doing this end-to-end integration where we're designing molecules, synthesizing them, testing them, and shipping them to our partners.
That's very interesting. So the wet labs you partner with are actually like third-party labs.
Yeah. So we partner with kind of the best in class chemistry labs, DMPK labs, folks at the cutting edge of automation, as well as just a lot of experience in scale. And then we offer this integrated service to our partners where they can get access to both the virtual and wet lab together.
And that's win-win for you and your laboratory partner as well, because it's more business for them.
Exactly.
It's more data for you. It's a perfect flywheel, isn't it?
Exactly.
Amazing. Um, well, I feel like I have like it's so clear what you're doing. What's amazing is the clarity of your vision and the work that you're doing. I think that's perfect. So what are you going to do in 2026 for your
Yeah.
customers?
I mean, we have a lot of ambitious goals that I'm excited about. I think the first thing that we are really advancing, we announced at the end of last year that we won a $21 million contract with ARPA-H, which is a part of the U.S. federal government, where we're collaborating with Amgen as well as some leading pioneers in organoids and microphysiological systems and tissue systems to develop what we're calling digital organs. So these can really start to simulate not just how does a molecule permeate across a membrane or dissolve, but what is the likelihood that this will cause cardiotoxicity in a human or cause drug-induced liver injury, for example. Those two alone make up about 40% of clinical stage toxicity failures of drugs. And so we're developing these digital organs that can really reduce the likelihood that a molecule is actually going to be toxic in the liver or toxic in the heart. So big, we're generating data on that now. We're building models on top of it. One area we're really excited for 2026 is starting to really push the validation of those models and start to roll them out to partners beyond Amgen. Um, the second piece here, as I just talked about, right, is this integration between the virtual lab and the wet lab. And there's some of that in the digital organs and work with Amgen. But beyond that, really scaling up our ability to explore compounds in virtual space and then rapidly turn around real compounds in the physical world with our wet lab partners to provide this end-to-end service. We've been doing that for many partners, but really scaling that up is the second piece. And then the last piece I mentioned, under the hood, we've been developing these AI medicinal chemistry assistants that are doing a lot of the legwork. To date, that's all been tools that we use internally to guide our own programs. But one of the big goals for us in 2026 is we've now kicked the tires on it, pressure tested enough that we're starting to get ready to make that available externally. So you don't necessarily need to work with us in a consulting model to benefit from it, but you could actually start to work with these medicinal chemistry assistants yourself and deploy them across your programs.
Whoa, that's amazing.
So yeah,
So
it's going to be a busy year, but it will be fun.
it's amazing here. So it's basically an MCP, boom, you send it across, boom, it comes back. Uh,
Exactly.
the next stage is to have a robot to actually do the lab work, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, um, this brings us towards the end of the half hour, and I have to say I'm amazed. I would say really impressed by the clarity of the work that you guys are doing. It's so
Thank you.
clear. you're so you've got everything lined up very nicely, very good, and it sounds like it's working well for you. How long has the company been around?
So we got started in 2022, and that's really where we were building kind of these early generations of the models, really trying to kick the tires on will this consortium come together and how do you actually validate that these models work and put all the infrastructure in place to kind of create this rising tide lifts all boats ecosystem. And then started kind of scaling that through the end of 22 and ever since. So we that was kind of our seed stage, started growing that, and then we raised our Series A earlier last year to continue to kind of scale and broaden the ambitions of the company to everything that we've been talking about today.
Amazing. All those were the Series A. Um, I think Amgen must be, not Amgen, Roche must be eating their hearts out that they let you go, you know. Uh,
Uh,
but this brings us to the very last question, which um, my viewers, listeners in the Life Sciences Today podcast community know that I've started asking this question a couple weeks ago, which is, Josh Haimson, what is the biggest anti-pattern in your industry today?
Yeah, I think the biggest anti-pattern, it probably will sound counter to everything I said before, is really believing a little too much in the hype of AI. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement because the technology is truly progressing at a rapid pace and truly creating a bunch of opportunities for a ton of value in the industry. But there are still fundamental limits, and I think some of the hype has gotten a little bit ahead of where the technology is today. And I think in drug discovery specifically, um, it's really important to keep in mind just how insanely difficult an industry this is, and how insanely difficult a task it is to design a drug that works that is safe, it's effective in humans. Um, the nuance is that as much as we've learned about biology, we still have a very incomplete map of how the body works. And that means that there is no AI that's going to spit out the perfect molecule that works out of the box. It's not possible. And we don't even have the data to confirm if it is a perfect molecule. And so instead, it's less about how do we build this superhuman scientist that is omniscient and can design the perfect molecule and more about where are there specific areas where we have enough data, enough confidence in the experiments we're running, and a really tight feedback loop to go come up with a hypothesis and then test that hypothesis and generate data and feed it back to actually deploy a useful tool that creates value for people. So that's kind of the I would say the anti-pattern is believing a little too much in the power of these tools and not being realistic enough about what we do know and what we don't know about biology and about how drug discovery works.
But a lot of that is, I totally agree with you. You see so much hype, and people are like, I think a lot of the hype is generated from consumer AI,
Hmm.
and your space, drug discovery. In your case, you're actually a subset of drug discovery, which is doing the ADMET and that interface with wet labs is so important. And I think a lot of it's having been driven from consumer AI. People's expectations are very high, but I think people in the industry like you that are doing practitioners, people who've been at Flatiron Health and Roche, who and Genentech, actually doing the work. The delta, the path you have to take to go from this idea, which sounds super elegant, to a place where it actually works, right? And,
Absolutely.
and there's so much with agents, there's so much systems engineering involved. Stuff that people don't think about, I think. They don't realize that when you come and say, well, I have an army of AI chemists doing the work, they don't think about how much systems engineering is going on under the hood, how much
Hmm.
software is actually being done with supervisors and logging and all the really, you know, super non-interesting stuff, almost
Yeah.
low tech of tech. But,
All the plumbing that makes it all work.
exactly, that's a great word. All the plumbing that makes it work. And I think that there's the whole question of observability of these systems, because the more you the more you spin up, the more complex you get, the more mission critical it becomes, the more you start interfacing with hardware. And the whole question of observability of the systems becomes really, really, really important. And I think that's one of the areas where the industry has not really come to grips. Over here you have all the SaaS companies and people doing DevOps, and it's been pretty much well worked out for almost 20 years now. Observability was a term that was invented like almost 20 years ago, I think. And so people, when they say observability and DevOps and cloud, it's pretty well understood. But when you say AI systems, especially like you with so many, when you have systems with hundreds or maybe more, thousands of agents running around in the computer, then that's got to be a challenge designing for observability.
Yeah.
Probably worth a podcast in its own, I think.
There's a whole separate podcast that we don't have the time for. But yeah, there's so much going on under the hood to make this all come together.
Amazing. Um, so we're coming to the end of the 30 minutes. For our listeners, I'll just repeat. My name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today. We're about the intersection between AI, technology, and biology, and the whole business facet of how this all ties together and creates value and moats for entrepreneurs like Josh Haimson, who is the CEO and co-founder of Inductive Bio. Josh, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.